True Values. I'm your host, James Fletcher, and we are back in our normal location. That's right, done traveling for a little while, and we have plenty to discuss. Here it is a mock draft special. We have watched the NBA lottery play out. We know who has the top picks in the draft this year. We'll talk about the sort of controversy, if you want to call it that, at the top of the board. Then we'll get into the picks. We'll go through 1 through 14, a little bit more analysis on those players who are expected to hear their name called early in this draft class, and some news and notes from around the combine as we go through it. We'll wrap up the show also with just a couple of other news and notes from the combine, some things to watch out for over the next couple of days as we wrap things up in Chicago and get into the most fun time here, where we've got all the data in. Everything is set. We have seen all we're going to see. There are still some workouts to take place, still some names that will come out of the draft as people make their withdrawal decisions. But that's when we can get into the nitty-gritty of team needs, the future of different franchises. Lots to break down. So let's go ahead. Let's get into it, because when the lottery was announced, we started to get more and more of the NBA rigged accusations flying around. And I know that it is a popular thing that is out there based on the fact that the Dallas Mavericks get the number 1 overall pick with their 1.8% chance. Now, right off the top, I just want to remind people, 1.8% is a real percentage, which means that, yes, it is possible for the lottery balls to fall that way. Obviously, that's just the start here, because the conspiracy would tell you that the NBA somehow wanted the Mavericks and Nico Harrison to trade Luka Doncic to the Lakers, and then as a reward, they were going to gift them the number 1 pick, which turns into Cooper Flagg. First hole in that theory, just to straight up tear it down, is that if you were going to create this type of conspiracy, you wouldn't make it look like a conspiracy, right? Like, you would tell Nico, call all the other teams and get their offers, and then just accept the Lakers. You wouldn't have this secret backdoor dealing that we had. You, especially once that secret backdoor dealing that led to the deal came out, would not then go on with the rest of whatever the plan is in this type of way. Now, let's just go ahead and let's throw that out, because that part is a little bit ridiculous, and also completely is a shift from the original conspiracy that the plan was to move the Dallas franchise to Las Vegas, which also never made any sense. So, where are we in terms of the conspiracy that the NBA lottery is fixed? Because we've seen over the years plenty of different occasions where this has come up, this has been a topic. I cannot speak to how it was done in the 90s, the origins of these conspiracies, the first ever lotteries that were done where they spun some envelopes in a ball. I cannot speak to that. What I can tell you is that the modern day NBA draft lottery is done by a third party company in a closed room, which includes members from each franchise, NBA executives, this third party company, which is completing the lottery process, and multiple journalists who are there. And the reason that there are so many representatives from so many different entities is to make sure, in absolutely clear terms, there is no conspiracy. Because why would the Jazz and the Hornets and the Wizards go along with such a plan and watch it play out? Because here's how the draft lottery works, for those of you who don't know. The draft lottery is set up in this closed room, and there are numbers which are generated. Now, each one of the lottery teams has been assigned a certain number of these combinations. And so when these numbers are spit out, the first number comes down. Now, maybe half the teams, maybe more, they now know that they no longer have any combinations that will work. They know, okay, we did not get the number one pick. They're ruled out. So they're going to stick where they're at for now. Then we get the second number, the third number, all the way to the final number, which then will let you know which team has that combination of numbers. This is all played out, again, in a very secure way, in front of plenty of witnesses from different organizations. Once that is done, we have the number one pick. It's the inverse of how it is displayed on television. The number two pick is then decided in the same way. And then the third pick and the fourth pick. So that is how this works. It's impossible to rig it without committing multiple federal crimes in front of a group of people who does not benefit from allowing you to commit multiple federal crimes. So it's just absurd. There's no, look, it's the way the lottery is set up, particularly right now. No one is supposed to get the number one pick. 14% is the highest odds you can achieve to get the number one pick. In fact, if you are the number one team in the pre-lottery process, the most likely outcome by a wide margin is that you receive the fifth pick. I believe it's 48% that you will pick fifth overall and that four teams will jump you into the lottery. And so the expected outcome, if you want to go based off of expected outcomes, for the team that is the worst record in the NBA is to pick fifth every year. And so, yes, you can call it unlucky, you can call it whatever you want, but that is the statistically most likely outcome, is that someone other than that team, in fact, if you combine the three worst teams who are all sitting at 14%, well, that doesn't add up to 50%. So still, the odds are that someone is going to come from outside of that group to get the number one pick. So I know conspiracies, they're fun, they're whatever. It's just not the case here. I mean, even look at the difference between 14% and 1.8%. If you're talking about the best odds that anyone had, it's less than 10 times. Well, you start talking about 10 to 1, and suddenly it doesn't seem as crazy of a, oh my God, 1.8%. If you look at the relative odds. But everyone thinks that the team with the worst record was supposed to get the number one pick. That's just not the case. That's not how this is set up. The NBA can look into changes. I think that there are changes out there. I don't think that they are to raise the percentages again, because the NBA is trying to de-incentivize tanking. I think they go further, the next step in that direction. We've seen the MLB implement rules which state that you cannot pick within the lottery selections a certain number of times in a row. I think that would be a good solution. Perhaps you can't get the number one pick twice in a row, can't pick in the top four 3 times in a row, whatever it is. I think that those are the things that you're going to see before we see lottery odds start to shift again in any kind of way. With all that said, there's plenty of storylines now to follow, because the 4 teams that move up into the lottery spots, those top 4, the Dallas Mavericks will pick number 1, something that we did not have before, so it completely changes the landscape of this draft. The San Antonio Spurs move up, and this is a real asset for them. We can talk about the player, but we'll talk just as much about the asset that they have to build out around Victor Wembanyama. The Philadelphia 76ers move up, a huge moment for that franchise, which tanked out the remainder of the season after injuries to Joel Embiid and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey as well, along with Jared McCain. They really lost anyone who could have helped them win games from the jump. They get this second chance to add a big piece to the roster and start to fill out, hopefully make a resurgence back towards the top of the standings. And the 4th team, the Charlotte Hornets, who were in that group of bottom teams that sticks in this range. They will get a chance to add a piece with LaMelo Ball, with Brandon Miller, hopefully get healthy there and see if they can finally get some kind of traction going the right direction with that franchise. So let's go ahead and we'll take a quick break here. When we come back on the other side, we will go through the mock draft and get you news and notes from the combine right here on Three True Values. Welcome back in. As we keep rolling here, we have a mock draft to run through. This is edition 4.0. We are going through just the top 14 picks, the lottery selections after these teams shifted around. We will have up at On3 another edition come out towards the end of this month. After the withdrawal deadline, we will take a little bit closer look at the final set of players that we have to break down over that span. We'll see who withdraws during that time span. We'll see what happens at the final day of the combine. Lots to break down here, lots to discuss over the next few weeks, and we will keep bringing you more episodes. But for now, let's get into it. Let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks, who shoot up the board in that shocking reveal this week at the lottery. They have the right to select Cooper Flagg now, which is going to be massive for the future of their franchise. There was speculation immediately after, understandably, given Nico Harrison's kind of message that he has sent that this is a 1-2 year window that they're trying to win a championship in, that perhaps they could try to package this pick in order to go get someone like a Giannis Antetokounmpo who could be on the market this offseason. However, quickly, those were shot down. Cooper Flagg is the type of prospect that Nico would want. He is a defense first guy, I think, at this point. I really like what he brings on that end of the floor. I think that's where the immediate impact will be the most clear. And pairing him with Anthony Davis, I think, is even bigger for the defense of this Mavericks franchise moving forward. I think also pairing him with Kyrie Irving, which of course would take some time if Kyrie returns to that franchise, is that he's got to overcome this injury first. But I think that playing him with someone like that at the guard position could really help his development on offense as he continues to adjust, continues to work on his game. We saw some of the holes while he was at Duke, obviously still a generational prospect, but there's little areas for him to clean up along the way, particularly in those clutch situations that we saw him in. But really, this is a bailout. This is a bailout for the fan base that was so distraught. This is a huge shot in the arm. There's hope again. There is hope again for the Dallas Mavericks, and that's good for the NBA. You want all of your teams to have some hope that in the future they are going to have great success. So a new era starting for the Dallas Mavericks. We will see what the next steps in that are, but there's another dynasty brewing in that same division because the San Antonio Spurs move up to number 2. And I've said this multiple times already. I said it in the article that I wrote. I've said it here during this podcast. I've said it to plenty of people who I've talked to along the way in between. I am viewing this number 2 pick currently as an asset. Now that asset will turn into Dylan Harper. We're pretty sure of that. He is the second best player on my board. He is at least a half tier below Cooper Flagg to me. Don't have them in the same group, but I think that he is also at least a half tier above the next group, which includes Trey Johnson, VJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey, players like that. So what do the Spurs do? Because Dylan Harper is a big time player. He's a really solid piece that you could add, a guard who has size, who shows a lot of ability to impact the game, but also plays a position where you have already filled your future. You've got Stephon Castle, who you drafted last year in the top 5, who, while I view him mostly as a shooting guard, has expressed that he wants to play point guard. Now, I think that he is going to settle in at shooting guard. I do still believe that's the case, particularly given that the Spurs traded this season for De'Aaron Fox, who is a point guard. So if you're the Spurs, you now have an interesting decision to make. And I think that you can go one of two ways with it as a franchise. You can say that we've got our point guard in place, we've got our shooting guard in place, we've got our center in place. Let's use this second pick as an asset. Let's go get a small forward or a power forward. Let's get someone who can fill out this starting lineup. Go get a star player. If Giannis Antetokounmpo is available, the Spurs are a team that was already mentioned as a potential trade candidate. Now, that was before they landed the number 2 pick. And I think if you're the Spurs, you're in even better position to make something like that happen. I think that now you're even more likely to do it because you might not have to give up everything. You probably package Devin Vassell, one of your wings who makes 17, $18 million, and then either Stephon Castle or Dylan Harper. I think that you can choose which of the two you want to send out in that deal to the Milwaukee Bucks to finish the deal. And so to be able to make that choice, you're keeping a piece of your roster in place. Now you're talking about having Fox, whichever young guard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Victor Wembanyama. That starting position is significantly better than if you had to give up Castle without the promise of having a prospect of the level of Harper coming in. So I think that the Spurs are in prime position. If Giannis does choose to leave Milwaukee, I think they are in probably the leader's position to get him into their franchise. Obviously, the Houston Rockets, another team in this same division, will also be in the mix as well with their young group of players who have already been drafted, have had a little bit of development time in the NBA. So, look, it very much seems like if you're someone wanting to bet on where Giannis Antetokounmpo will end up, the state of Texas appears to be a pretty good bet. But if you're the Spurs, I don't think it has to be Giannis. I think you can make other deals around this number 2 pick. There will be other star players out there who can fill out your roster a little bit better. Or you can go the other way. You could make the decision that you've been gifted the opportunity to have Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle on very cheap contracts and see what you can get for De'Aaron Fox. What is De'Aaron Fox's worth on the trade market right now? You know what it was because you just made a deal. Can you get back more than what you traded and just end up with a net positive and have your point guard and shooting guard position set for the future? Is that the route that they want to take? It really depends on the kind of ramp that you want, I think, towards contending for the NBA title. Because let's be honest, young guards have not contributed to winning consistently in the NBA over the past several years. So if you're trying to contend for the title this year, I think you probably stick with De'Aaron Fox. If you're looking at the long play, you're saying, look, we want a dynasty. We want to win 5, 6 of these down the road while Victor Wembanyama is in his prime. Now you might start to consider, do we hold on to Harper and Castle? Then we have a really big backcourt that has a lot of skill as well. That's going to be the decision that they have to make over these next couple of months. As we move down the board to the 76ers, they're also in an interesting position because we know the top 2 who are going to come off the board. That leaves this next tier of players available for them. Well, you currently have a core of Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid. We know Embiid's injury issues. They don't seem to be going away anytime soon. They're trying to reload him and keep him as healthy as they can for this upcoming season. We will see. That's to be determined. I think you have to operate like he's going to be healthy, given the investment that you have into it. Paul George, similar thing. I think you have to invest in the idea that he's going to have some kind of bounce back. I don't think that you're going to get any kind of market value for him, so it's probably not worth pursuing seriously a trade unless someone just comes to you and wants him. We will see what plays out there. Tyrese Maxey is the interesting one because he probably has some high value, but how many teams are out there looking for what he is? I think there's a couple. I think Orlando would be a very interesting one if they decide that they want to move forward with Jared McCain and one of the guards in this class. That would be VJ Edgecombe or Trey Johnson. The easiest solution, though, here is to keep all of the players that you had. Like I said, you've kind of got to stay invested. You've got to operate under the assumption that these players are going to be healthy because you're so invested in that. That's your only chance of reaching the top here based on the current construction of this roster. And if that is the case, I think you're best off keeping Maxey, investing in those other 2 being healthy, and drafting Ace Bailey. Because while Ace Bailey has plenty of holes in his game, he's been picked apart as a prospect over the past year, we know that he can make shots. And I think simplifying his role to the absolute core is probably what is best for him in his early NBA career. Getting him in a spot where he can develop good habits, consistent habits, as the fourth or fifth option on the floor is something that will benefit him long term as he grows into what he can become. Now, I know he got a bad measurement there. It came in a little bit shorter than we thought he would, but I still think he's still the size that you want for a small forward, power forward. You got Paul George out there. I think you throw him in that other forward spot. You let him know, hey, we need you to focus on improving on the defensive end, focusing, locking in. We need you to stand in the corner and make 3-point shots. Those are things I think he can do early on while he works on the rest of his game, surrounded by people who have been there and done that at the top level of the game. I think it's a really good landing spot for Ace Bailey. At number 4, that leaves us with the Charlotte Hornets, who really need some consistency. Look, they're a team that has some flashy players. They've got, you could argue, a culture issue just based on kind of the lack of serious players that they seem to have, at least at the top of their roster. We haven't seen LaMelo Ball healthy in a while. We haven't seen Brandon Miller healthy this season. There's Grant Williams, one of their veterans, probably a candidate to be moved, but he was injured this year. There's just not a lot. Mark Williams had a trade rescinded because he failed a medical. So there's a lot of questions about this team. I think they could go pretty much any direction they wanted, which is why I'm going to go with VJ Edgecombe. I think if you want to get the most out of Ball, out of Miller, you need somebody who's going to come in and play winning basketball. VJ Edgecombe will do that. He's going to be a defensive force on the wing. He's got that long wingspan. He is a really good defender for his position. And so I like the ability to slot him in between those two and potentially give them some kind of stability on that end of the floor where they just don't play a lot of defense. Moving to number 5, as we exit those teams that moved up, we've got the Utah Jazz. They, of course, had the worst record in the NBA, but as I said before, this is the most likely outcome for them to pick, is 5th overall. I know that it doesn't feel that way based off of kind of our perception, but this is the most likely spot for them to pick. So they are at number 5, and I think they get a pretty good consolation prize in Trey Johnson here in my mock draft. The Jazz have been searching for that guard who can really initiate the offense for them, who can be that go-to guy. We've seen ups and downs from Keontae George, turnover issues. They moved him to the bench at one point. We'll see how long Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson are still with that team. I think that they're players that you're willing to move off of for assets if you're a rebuilding Jazz franchise. But Trey Johnson can come in and be a bucket getter for you. And I think this is a team that could use something like that at the guard position. So I really like Trey Johnson. We know he's got really good size. We know that's something that the Jazz value at that guard position in particular. Remember that they don't call it point guard and shooting guard. They use different terms. I understand it. It's the Will Hardy system is a good system. I like what he does. It's just a lack of talent that they've got. They've had some swings and misses in the draft in recent years. Some guys who they're still hoping will pan out, but haven't shown it yet. And we'll see what they're able to do. But I think Trey Johnson can at least give you a floor on offense that you can build off of. If you're the Washington Wizards at 6, you get a really tough draw here because I do have a tier break after 5. And the Wizards are also, they're looking for something to invest in, to get excited about. You got Alex Sarr last year at number 2, and I think while he has some potential moving forward, he's not this franchise cornerstone that you're just in outstanding belief can become something awesome. Right. Like even if he hits his peak, it's probably an Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson type of player, which is a really, really good player, but those players are not the best player on their team. You know, Jaren Jackson is the second guy in that Memphis scheme. Evan Mobley, probably second or third, depending on the night, in that scheme. So who is going to come in and be the rest of that? Again, you've got Bilal Coulibaly, really good player, not a number one by any means. Bub Carrington has shown some exciting things at point guard. Unfortunately, they don't have anyone on the board who I think can become a number one option. So I think you go the safe route and you go Cone Knipple here, and you just add to the base of that roster and hope that maybe next year you get lucky in this mix. You get one of these top tier players, because I think next year we've got 4 to 5 guys who could be number one options for their team when they get drafted. So buy your time. Don't go swing huge for some big upside play that's not there. Stick with Cone Knipple. I know it's a frustrating, slow rebuild for this Wizards franchise, but I think that's the best move that they have on the board at this time. At number 7, we're going to go with Common Malawak to the Pelicans. And I know that they invested in a center last year, Yves Missy, but Malawak is a little bit different of a player that some people have some hope can be a stretch 5. We'll see how much that develops, but he is a much different player from Missy, I think. And so I like the ability to add to depth at that position. If they're not going to go get one in free agency, that is still a position of need. You still got to fill 48 minutes. And I don't think that Missy is a guy who's going to be playing 40 minutes at the center position anytime soon in his career. So bring in these two guys. If you want to try to play them together, get some of those big minutes, you can look at that as you rebuild what this roster is going to look like. If not, look, you can at least fill the 48 minutes however you see fit. At number 8, this one's a little bit of a controversial one. I went back and forth here. I landed on Nolan Traore. If you had told me Jeremiah Fears, I would have also been okay with that. I think Jeremiah Fears is kind of where I was at over the past couple of weeks when thinking about this selection. But I land on Nolan Traore because he has had another resurgence in his season in France. He has looked really, really good down the stretch. He is scoring at a high level. And I think if you're the Nets, this one's an upside play. I think that you're looking at some of the guards that are on the board and you're saying, we're in this rebuild. We're in it for the long haul. We want to land some superstars, but right now there's none available for us. So let's go. Let's build. We've got all of these picks to use. Let's use them. And this first one has to be an upside swing, I think. So you look at these two guards, both have high upside, but I think Traore has shown it in bigger and better flashes. And so I'm willing to bet on that right now a little bit more than I am on Jeremiah Fears, who's got a slighter frame. He really struggled to be efficient in SEC play. It improved down the stretch, but I think that there is a long adjustment period for Jeremiah Fears in the NBA. I think you're talking at least a year or two removed before we start to see Jeremiah Fears become an efficient basketball player at this level. And so I'm going to bet on this Traore move just a little bit more than I'm willing to on Fears. At number 9, we've got the Raptors, and I'm going Kasparas Jakučionis. This is about the right range for him. I think that once we get to this 9-10 kind of range, there's different ways that you can go. It kind of depends on the position you're looking for. We know that the Raptors value size. That is something that Masai Ujiri has repeatedly drafted to his team. You add this, I think he can play the 1, can play the 2, can play with other guards as needed. So I like Kasparas Jakučionis. In this weird rebuild that the Raptors are doing, it's kind of drawn out. They're kind of in the middle tier here. Not sure exactly what the long-term vision is, but this is a nice piece. I think he fits in, and I think he can grow at whatever pace they want to see him integrate into the rotation. At number 10, we have the Houston Rockets, and I think we have got the ultimate Houston Rockets pick right here. I think that this could just land perfectly for the Houston Rockets. I've got them taking Colin Murray-Boyles, a player that I have been high on. He did not have a great combine performance. Some questions. The shot did not look very good. There's no doubt about it. I think that that's something that's going to have to be multiple off seasons worth of development before he's able to consistently knock that down. His height came in just a little bit below what I was probably expecting. Again, just a slight little knock on him. It pushes him down just a little bit there. But this is a defensive monster. All right, you play him at power forward. He can guard centers. He can guard guys on the perimeter. I don't have any doubt about his ability to impact the game on defense. And that's what Ime Udoka really values, is your ability to contribute on that end. I think if you put him out there in some lineup combination that includes Amin Thompson alongside Colin Murray-Boyles, and you're talking about some elite defense out there. Dylan Brooks in that lineup as well. Fred VanVleet. Like, you've got some real defensive players on this Houston Rockets roster. And I think you add Murray-Boyles to that combo and things could get scary out there. You could really lock teams down and be extremely switchable in the process. So I really like that fit for the Rockets. At number 11, we've got the Portland Trail Blazers, who I have taken a swing here on Noah Esingay. I think that while the guard position is kind of in flux, you've got Scoot Henderson. How good can he become? We've seen the flashes. We've seen him start to make improvements finally here at the end of his second year. You've got Shaden Sharp, similar. I mean, it's sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't really know what it's going to turn into. But as a team that took a big leap this year, you've got Klingon as the future at center. You've got Tumani Kamara, who looks really good on the wing next to Denny Avdija. I think you add to that forward room. You try to take another big swing there and see if you can get even more value out of that position while giving these guards one more year to see what they can provide. Can they take that next leap before you go in and try to replace them, whether that's through trade, whether that's through free agency, or in the draft next year? So I like the idea of Noah Esingay here. Take the big swing, somebody who's really projectable, bring them into a young roster that finally is finding some footing. He's got a foundation to build off of here with this unit and can take that development ramp towards becoming his best version. At number 12, we have Derek Queen to the Chicago Bulls. It is time for the Bulls to rebuild. Unfortunate that they lose the coin flip and end up not getting the number one pick. Really a crazy storyline that we probably haven't talked enough about is the fact that they tied in the standings, go to a coin flip. It ends up the side of the coin that the Mavericks had. That's the one that lands the number one pick. So they go Derek Queen here. I think he is my best player left on the board, and he's also a position of need where it feels like eventually you're going to move off of Nikola Vucevic. We'll see. Like, it's time to rebuild. Okay, so it's time to get some of these guys out of here. I think Queen still gives them an offensive punch, which they like, or at least based on the fact that they brought in Vucevic at one point. This is the same group from front office to coaching staff. I think that they like an offensive center, somebody who can make an impact on that end. That's what Derek Queen can do. And so I like this fit. I think it is a good kind of ramp forward for the Bulls. At number 13, we've got the Atlanta Hawks, and this is a controversial one. We'll talk through it. The Atlanta Hawks I have going with Jeremiah Fears. Now, I just went through some of my concerns about Jeremiah Fears in the short term, which I guess, translates into the long term. Yes, can he reach that full potential? I think if he falls here to 13, he is still enough of an upside player that somebody's probably going to take him in the lottery. I do think that that's probably the case. Despite concerns that I have, I think I'm pretty confident that he will land in the lottery somewhere right now, based off the info that I have. But what does the fit with Atlanta look like? Well, this is a front office that invested heavily in surrounding Trae Young with long, big wings. Look at Jalen Johnson. They invest in re-signing him. They draft Zachary Risachet. They've made investments in building up that wing room. Dyson Daniels, another great example at shooting guard. They want the biggest and longest players at every position but point guard in order to maximize what Trae Young can be. Well, then you fire the front office when the plan seemed to be going well. Like, I liked what they had started to build here. Yeah, Jalen Johnson got hurt. That really set them back. You still had more questions to answer. The center position. You needed to fill out depth on that roster. But the core of what the vision looked like seemed to be really good. I thought they got great return in the DeJounte Murray trade. So to move on from that franchise, or that front office, excuse me, suggests to me that maybe they don't think that game plan, that vision, is going to play out long term. Are there questions about Trae Young's future with Atlanta? I don't think we know yet, but it's on the horizon. Like, that's a real possibility now. And that's why I've got Jeremiah Fears here. Could be in the short term a backup for Trae Young. Could be in the long term a replacement. We'll see how that plays out. And to wrap this up, we've got the San Antonio Spurs picking again at number 14. You can go a number of different ways here. I think that they go with one of the wings who is going to provide them solid defensive value. There's three of them who I've got kind of clumped up in this tier here. I've got Carter Bryant, who is who I ultimately went with the Spurs selecting, a little bit younger than the other options, a little bit more pedigree in terms of what he's supposed to become. I really liked what he did at Arizona, going through the film more and more, filling a role. This is a guy who came in as a 5-star, could have, demanded more, but he really looked at this group and at Arizona and said, what do they need me to do? And he filled that role perfectly down the stretch of the season and provided them really good value. So I've got him here. You could also go Neat Clifford from Colorado State. I think he is in this same tier. Cedric Coward, somebody who is rising quickly up boards into the first round. I think he would be an option for the Spurs here as well. But those answers will play out more and more over the next couple of weeks. When we come back next week or the week after, we'll see exactly when. Depends on kind of how much transfer news we get, if there's anything that we need to discuss next week. If not, it'll be 2 weeks from now. We will be discussing the withdrawal deadline and more right here on 3 True Values. Before we leave, do have one withdrawal to mention. Boogie Fland is out of the NBA draft in the middle of the combine. He stepped away. That now leaves a new best player on the board in the transfer portal. We'll see where he lands. His recruitment will really ramp up now. So that's something else to monitor along the way. Come back next week or the week after right here on 3 True Values. We'll keep you up to date on all things college basketball and NBA draft over the next couple of months. Thanks for tuning in.